What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news and action. Happy holidays from your hosts, Hunter and Tony. And we're going to jump right into some storylines here about some of the notable portal moves here. First big name, lots of big names actually, but first big name here is we have quarterback Josh Hoover from TCU has officially entered the portal. Quarterback Rocco Becht is leaving Iowa State after Matt Campbell departure. Quarterback Bo Pribula is leaving Mizzou, and one we forgot to mention last week was quarterback Sam Levitt is entering the portal and leaving Arizona State.
These are all some really big names hitting the portal. I expect all four of these guys to land at a program where they expect to win next season. Sam Levitt, I think, is going to be the most sought-after one out of this group. He clearly, his season was hampered this past year due to injury. So he led the Arizona State team 2 years ago into the playoff, and he looked really sharp. So I expect him to land somewhere big as well. Another quarterback entering the portal, which we assumed would officially happen, is USF quarterback Byron Brown. He is officially entering his name. Curious to see where he lands. I think he'll land potentially at Auburn here, so curious to see where that one goes. And then we have your running back, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Javon Gordon, the true freshman running back, who will be transferring for the Green Wave as well.
That's a big one. Honestly, I thought he was one that might have, stuck it out being a true freshman, and he got a lot of carries towards the back half of the season. So I don't know if it's just as simple as probably just better opportunity elsewhere. It was kind of a running back room by committee, so maybe he just wants to find that true number one. But another Tulane player that is going to be transferring is D-line Santana Hopper. He has had a phenomenal season. I think he earned first team all-conference in the American as well, and he's just always had great stuff, great seasons. So it's he's probably looking to go elsewhere. Maybe he follows Summerall, and then my favorite tight end Rocky Beers from Colorado State has entered the portal, and that is just a fantastic name. And wherever he lands, especially if it's a high, highly touted P4 team, that jersey's going triple platinum.
It definitely is. He is incredible. On top of it, having just a great name like that, he's set up for NIL success, especially at a bigger school with a little bit more influence. So we'll be curious to see who picks up some Rocky Beers for their team next year. But someone who will be staying put is Kenny Dillingham. He will remain the head coach at Arizona State. He inked a 5-year deal worth about $7.5 million per year. A lot of rumors swirling around him potentially going to Michigan, but he stays at his alma mater. He gets to stay home. I'm really happy that this deal came to light because I really like Kenny Dillingham, and I love that he's committed to his school, to his hometown, to where he wants to be at, and that they rewarded him for that. So the next step is getting increased donation budgets from donors as well for him.
That was a big thing that came out of it, is when he was asked how to make this program successful, and he said, have someone sign a $20 million check and send it our way. And it's one of those things that we're sad to see happen to college football, where we got these coaches basically begging for money because they know that's the only way to compete now. And it's ridiculous, and hopefully it can be somewhat regulated in the near time, where we're not having coaches try to sell their soul for some rich person to come sign a check so that they can have a successful program. But until then, that's what it's going to take. But another big thing that made the news today is Notre Dame and USC not renewing their historic rivalry, which is absurd to hear. They said that they're going to try to, get it back going again in the 2030 season, which is still absurd nonetheless. Mm-hmm. But to kind of just throw away this rivalry that's been going on for decades now, and just think of like nothing of it, just blows my mind. But they tried to,
I believe it's been played every year since 1946. So
yeah, I couldn't remember the exact year, but I knew it was a long time. So, but it's insane to think that it's kind of just almost thrown to the side now, especially with the whole fact that with how Notre Dame has been perceived these past couple weeks. And them needing these sort of games to kind of stay relevant. But they did replace it, however, for at least the next 2 seasons with a home-and-home series against BYU starting next season in the 2026 season, where it will be played in BYU or at BYU's home stadium, and then the 27 season it will be played in South Bend.
I am really excited for this one, considering Notre Dame ducked BYU in the Pop-Tart Bowl, which we'll talk about here a little later in the episode. But I think them getting BYU on the schedule is really good. I'm sure Notre Dame fans are excited about it, probably more so than Notre Dame fans are. So it sucks that USC is no longer going to be on their schedule. Rivalries in college football is what makes them so great, and the current era is trending less and less towards them and more away from them. As we all know, the dollar just drives everything in college football, and things are getting cut that used to be part of what made football great for college teams.
You hate to see these rivalries, especially these super historic rivalries, just kind of get tossed to the side purely because of the dollar. And it sucks that it's gotten to this point, and I hope that it can find a way to kind of get restored and revitalized so we can keep these rivalries. Because, while these kids are not, permanent and staying there, the rivalries are. And they know that when they're going into these games. They know that this is, something they look forward to when they commit to these teams, is like, oh, if I'm committing to Ohio State, I'm looking forward to that Michigan game. So, something like that just kind of getting thrown away, it takes away from a lot of what college football is and should be. So hopefully they can get it fixed sooner rather than later to keep these sort of historic rivalries just alive and well.
I hope so. College football is a sport that is broken from the ground up, and its structure needs to be rebuilt, in my opinion. So we'll have to see how things shape out over the next decade, but it sucks that for the next 5 years we're not going to get this storied rivalry. But the elephant in the room is the first round of the playoffs. 4 games, 4 outcomes. Unfortunately, my JMU Dukes, Tony's Tulane Green Wave, did not get the results we were hoping for. Obviously, we wish it went better for our teams, but nonetheless, it was a great first round of the playoffs, and we're going to jump right into the recaps right now, starting with Oklahoma and Alabama. Alabama completing the largest comeback in college football history, 34-24. This was a game that just flipped in an instant. I went to the bathroom and came back out, and next thing I knew, Alabama had tied the game. It was insane.
It was a great game to watch. I was in the car watching it, driving back home for the holidays, but it was like edge of the seat, like, oh my God, this is insane. Like you had said, it was like Oklahoma jumps out to that early lead and quick. I mean, so quick. It was just like, boom, they're up 17-0. And it's like, whoa, like this isn't going to be close. And then Alabama gets on the board there, starts to get it going a little bit. And then Oklahoma has the chance to basically put the nail in the coffin early in the game. But a dropped pass on third down completely changes everything about the game, where, John Mateer, great ball thrown, could not have been better for the receiver. Receiver couldn't bring it in. But even more so when you look back on the replay, he could have ran for the first down as well, which could have also changed how it went. But ended up not being able to connect. Ensuing fourth down, blocked punt. And it is just those sort of things absolutely kill games. And the momentum very clearly swung in Alabama's favor. And they just never looked back after that.
The blocked punt, muff punt, I haven't seen plays like that before, where he just, the all-SEC punter just kind of dropped the ball. I don't, a lapse in concentration. I feel for the guy. It completely switched the momentum of the game. You texted us in our group chat about it. Completely flipped the game. Alabama was able to get a field goal, and next thing you know, now it's 17-10, and Alabama's right back in this thing. Next drive, Mateer throws a 50-yard pick six, and we have a tie game. And it was unfathomable to see that happening when Oklahoma jumped out to that really big lead.
I never would have saw that coming, honestly. I mean, it seemed like that pick six was purely just miscommunication from the route that was supposed to run or when he was supposed to throw it, because the receiver was still downfield. Mateer was throwing almost like a comeback route to the sideline, and the only person there is a corner, and it's just him in 10 yards of space, and next thing you know, he's in the end zone. I mean, it was as clear as day a miscommunication on someone's side there, but it doesn't matter because after that, it just seemed like it was just killer for Oklahoma, where they just never looked the same after that. They just got shocked to the core and just could not get it going.
It really was. It felt like Oklahoma, the crowd, the team was just shocked, and they never recovered it. And credit to Alabama, and specifically Ty Simpson. The whole team played so composed despite being down early. You didn't get that feeling of them being overwhelmed by the moment despite that huge deficit. And they played their game, played smart football, and trusted their guys to make the right decisions. And it paid off because they came storming back. And, you know, if you just look at the box score, you never would have known that Oklahoma had a 17-point lead at the start of this game, because Alabama in that second half just dominated the game. I know Oklahoma missed a couple field goals in the second half that may or may not have helped them, but I don't think that it was going to ultimately matter. They were not able to be successful after they relinquished that huge lead.
It seemed like the writing was just on the wall going into the half, 17-17, which felt just terrible. I know that Oklahoma was going in just licking their wounds, and it just seemed from there on wasn't great. Thought they had somewhat of a chance. You know, Alabama came out of the half with possession. Oklahoma forced the punt, so it was like, okay, cool, we got the stop. We can sort of get on our high horse here, but then they just couldn't get anything going after that. They had to punt on their ensuing drive. They let up a touchdown after that, and then they just could not get anything going till too late in the fourth quarter, and from there, it just wasn't great. But that's just playoff football. I mean, we were harking on how we thought that home field advantage was going to be crucial for them, and this weekend, it seemed like, especially with these first two games, that home field advantage did not exist almost. I mean,
No.
it was just crazy how the energy was just sucked out immediately, especially after that pick six. But got to give credit to Alabama there for not looking down and out of it, getting down that much that early. And I'm really looking forward to their next game.
This drops Oklahoma to 0-5 all time in the playoff, which is crazy to think. So they gotta look in the mirror and try to bounce back this next season. This is not how they wanted the year to end, especially in this fashion at home. Alabama, credit to them for getting the job done. They're going to end up facing Indiana in the Rose Bowl next. That should be a really fun matchup of, you know, what could be considered the new blood versus the old blood of college football right now. But the next game of the weekend, Miami at Texas A&M in College Station, a barn burner of a game with a final score of 10-3.
This was easily the best, worst game of all time. Just watching it, kept looking over, and I'm like, it's still 0-0. I'm going between that, and I'm watching other games and all this other stuff, and I'm like, this game they just can't buy points at this point. It was so bad, but it was so good at the same time, because it was just like, two teams that have had very high-powered offenses just struggling all together, and it was just to show the defense, and it was just like, this is some hard-nosed football here that we all love to see sometimes, but, you know, everybody not caring about it because there's an SEC team in it, so they're like, oh, this is the typical football of the SEC, and it's like, no, they were just terrible. But, like, no points until the second half there. 4 total missed field goals, and again, crazy weather that day. Wind gusts were getting up to 30 miles per hour, where it looked like you had a line drive and hitting the uprights, and the next it almost looks like it does a 90-degree turn and goes wide. It was just insane. But got to give a shout-out to Mark Fletcher. The dude was a dog for Miami. He just beat up A&M all day. They had no answer for him. He had 172 of the 175 rushing yards that Miami had in the entire game, which is just absurd to think about.
In that second half, they just leaned on him, and he delivered. He was gashing A&M the entire second half, and really allowed Miami to take control of a game that no one wanted to take control of. And Miami did it by being more physical at the line of scrimmage the entire second half and honestly most of the game. They were able to win those battles in the trenches, and that's what was the difference maker in a day where neither team could throw the ball efficiently, successfully, with wind gusts getting up to 30 miles per hour. So Fletcher just taking control. He had a day to remember. He played great. Could not give him enough credit. And ultimately, A&M just could not overcome their own mistakes, and it was costly. Marcel Reed never looked comfortable in the pocket, moving around. He just never found his footing in this game. And credit for Miami for keeping the defense sharp and making A&M feel like they were second-guessing themselves the entire game. It was an ugly game, but Miami came out on top, and Tony, this was not the way I thought this game would go at all.
Absolutely not. Looking at this game, you're thinking, like, this is going to be, take the over. They're going to score a lot of points. It's going to be a crazy, hectic game because of the environment, because of the way the teams have played. I immediately thought that, but it just, no team could get anything going, and anytime they got anywhere close, it was, let's try a field goal, and it was a miss purely because of either the weather or just a bad kick. And, there was quite a bit of punts. It was your classic Big Ten West sort of game where there's just nothing but punts. The two guys in the stands with their punts shirts, like, yes, punts. But I got to give a shout out to Malachi Toney as well, where we thought he had a costly fumble in the fourth quarter. And luckily his defense held up for him, and he's the one that ends up scoring the game-winning touchdown on a sort of jet sweep. But again, that dude is still electric. You always have to keep your eye on him.
I thought he was going to return that punt. I can't believe he got tripped up. I really did.
The crazy shoelace tackle. I mean, I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, oh my god, he's gone. And then next thing you know, the good old classic shoelace tackle where the defender puts his foot in the back of his leg, and it was a great tackle nonetheless. But it seemed like that was the big difference in the game, is that Miami got their stars involved with Malachi Toney. They were trying to set him up for success as much as possible, even if it wasn't really in the pass game because they couldn't pass well. Doing these sort of jet sweep rushing sort of things with your receivers, and then obviously with the punt returns because there's a lot of punts. But it seemed like A&M really couldn't get their guys sort of going, and when they were, it was just miscue after miscue and mistake after mistake that really just shot them in the foot. I mean, having 89 rushing yards in the game compared to Miami's 175, right then and there is what's going to kill you. I mean, your leading rusher being Marcel Reed is not ideal unless he's putting up hundreds of yards, but you have great running backs, and I feel like they just weren't utilized, but that just goes to show how Miami was just kind of controlling the lines on both sides of the ball.
They really did. This game was won in the trenches because no one else really felt like they wanted to win this game, and this was a game we both thought, take the over, high-powered offenses, and the defenses were going to have to really step up, and the defenses did, to their credit. However, Miami's going to have to turn around and face Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl next, and they did not look like a team that was ready to play Ohio State. Ohio State has a long layover. Miami can get in the film room, get some corrections done, but they're going to have to really improve their game strategy to face Ohio State. And one last thing before we jump into the other games here, I just want to say that watching the ESPN post game on this was honestly really frustrating because you have Booger McFarland giving credit to Miami and to the team as a whole for overcoming the adversity. And I apologize for my ignorance. I do not know the other host's name from ESPN, one of their standard show hosts, not really their analyst. He just kept going back on, well, they're going to have to get Carson Beck going. They got to get Carson Beck to play. He played terrible. They can't win if he's going to play like this. And just kept harping on that, where Booger would completely change the subject and he would just come back to that. And it just felt like pushing an agenda where, Carson Beck didn't have his best game, but also Miami didn't need him to when they were running the ball so well. So why can't the narrative be about, wow, Miami's run game today was just so great. Carson Beck did not need to be the hero. Instead of trying to make the narrative, Carson Beck was bad today. I hate when these kinds of narratives get pushed. I don't want to harp on it too much. Obviously, they need to make narratives. They have to have storylines. But the storyline could have been about Miami overcoming more than just that and leaning on Mark Fletcher instead of harping on Carson Beck.
Absolutely. And, we were talking about it when we were watching the JMU game together where they were like, oh, it seemed like they couldn't trust their quarterback in the second half there. And I'm like, I don't think it's really that. I think it's more or less we're going to keep doing what's working, which is running the ball. I mean, we'll see how their adjustments are coming out of into the second half. But if we can continue to just run the rock, we're going to run the rock because that's what's working. That's what's setting us up for success. So I'm with you there. It's kind of stupid where you kind of try to point it towards somebody on why things are going wrong. And obviously the quarterback's going to be the easiest one too, especially Carson Beck with, his history and how he's a big name in the college football landscape, and also being former SEC, they're probably going to be like, oh, we got to try and beat him down as much as possible because he doesn't have that patch on his jersey anymore. So who knows? We all know how they like to play with their SEC bias. They're not going to discredit the SEC. They're going to discredit what Miami couldn't do right. So it'll be interesting to see if Miami can, quickly get it together before they have to face a powerhouse in Ohio State. But now moving on to the unfortunate of the last two games here of the outcomes, where of course Tulane traveled to Oxford and got the brakes beaten off of them yet again. Look, didn't go the way we wanted to. Nobody wanted it to end this way. I don't care what anybody says, except for those few assholes that were like, oh, I hope they lose and get destroyed. But nonetheless, this is a season to be proud of for Tulane. It was a very historic season. They won the American for the first time since 22. They made it into the playoff. They earned their way into the playoff as the first team to come out of the American to do it since the expansion, I should say, because Cincinnati did do it when they were in the American. But since the expansion, first team to make it in there. But nonetheless, got to give thanks and a good luck to Coach Sumrall for all he's done for the program, albeit only 2 years, but those 2 years were electric. He put the team in good positions to win. And, I think he's going to do a pretty good job at Florida. I'll definitely keep a close eye on it to see how he does and, the things that come of it. But, again, expected this game to be a lot closer than it was. I thought that both teams were going to go in trying to make, adjustments from the first game. Ole Miss obviously did not have to make that many adjustments because they destroyed in the first game and made it look easy. And now in the second game, they also made it look easy. The problem was, I think, for Tulane is that Ole Miss jumped out quick. They scored on their first drive. They scored in less than a minute, and 3 plays, bang, bang, bang. They're in the end zone. Okay, cool, whatever, scripted drive. But it just seemed like Tulane just could not catch up after that. Our first drive looked fantastic. We were controlling the ball, doing well, getting the first downs when we needed to, and then get down close to the red zone. Interception, can't have those, especially that early into the game. I think you walk away with points there, regardless if it was a touchdown or a field goal. I think that changes the narrative a little bit there that, like, okay, we can do it. Like, we went down there, we did our part. We just got to get one stop, and they could not get a stop. But I got to give a little credit to Ole Miss, drowning out all the drama. There was the whole thing of, is this Lane Kiffin's team, or how are they going to respond to all this sort of drama around it, especially with, some of the coordinators coming back and, still coaching throughout it, even though they're going with Ole Miss over to LSU. But I got to give some credit to them. I know they've been through a lot, and internally especially, for drowning it out and just playing very good football. They did look very good. Their offense still looked very tight. Their defense still looked very cohesive. So got to give them the shout out for that. But for Tulane, it seemed like it was just the same story as it was all season, where can't finish drives, costly turnovers on these sustained drives, or just kind of stupid ones, and couldn't get any sort of rhythm going. A big counter here was going for it on fourth down. Sumrall, we know he's aggressive. He always has been the moment he entered the building. And he said he was going to be aggressive in this game, and he was. But going 0 for 4 on fourth down absolutely kills everything you have.
I think you have to be
especially these close
aggressive,
fourth
though,
and ones.
in a game like this when you're a Tulane or
Absolutely.
JMU. You got to be
Absolutely.
aggressive, so you got to live and die by the sword there.
Absolutely, and I expected it. I had fully expected this. Any sort of close yardage situation, we're going for it every single time because you got to buy those extra downs. You have to earn them, and they just couldn't get it done. I mean, some third down conversions good and all that, but it just came to those fourth down conversions. They could not get anything going. I know a bunch of close fourth and shorts, just trying to do either the tush push or just some sort of short yardage, and it just seemed like that we just couldn't get it going. But another massive point to this was the defense could not buy a stop, not a single stop. Out of the entire game, they had 4 total stops, not including the end of game possession where Ole Miss just ran out the clock. So that says it all. I mean, that says it all. Where they're getting the ball, and you expect them to score at this point, and it's just that's never going to be a key to success there. Nothing you ever want to see. I mean, with how quickly they jumped out there 14-0 just like that, it felt like, okay, this is going to be a little rough one. But then, after they jumped out to 14-0, it seemed like, okay, we had a little almost push there where we got points on the board, we got a stop, and it was like, okay, cool. Like, we have a chance here to bring it in within a score. And then they just couldn't, again, convert on those fourth downs. Mm-hmm. And then it just got away from there. I mean, we had a shot there coming out of the half. We got the ball first coming out of the half. Couldn't score. Had to punt, and I think that just spelled the way the game was going to go. If we came out and score coming out of that second half, I think it changes it a little. But having to punt on that first drive really just shows like this is how this game's going to go. And unfortunately, again, did not go our way. But again, I don't care what anybody says. Everyone will be like, oh, we told you so, we told you so. I don't care about any of that. This team deserved to be there. They earned their way to get there. I don't think it would have been any different if it was any other team realistically. But it is what it is at the end of the day, and I'm looking forward to them getting back to that position. If the committee or the playoff decides to not find a way to just ostracize the entire G5. But it was unfortunate end of the season. I can't hark on it too much because it is what it is. We're going to have a new coach coming in next year, probably a whole new landscape of players with how the portal is and whatnot and NIL. But I know they left Tulane left with their pockets a lot fuller than if they weren't there. So that helps a lot too.
Like we talked about, money runs the whole sport. So Tulane definitely got a payday. I was cheering for Tulane. I really was. I was really hoping that they could overcome the adversity and get the job done. It just wasn't meant to be. And it was not meant to be for JMU at Oregon. Final score 51-34. A hell of a season for JMU. Winning the Sun Belt, making the college football playoff in our 4th year at the FBS. I would not trade this season for anything, including another FCS title game. And fun fact, most people didn't realize this. Oregon actually agreed to a last team to score wins agreement. So JMU is actually going to the Orange Bowl. Most people didn't realize that. So let's go Dukes. In all seriousness, though, good teams win, great teams cover, and JMU backdoor covered the spread there on the final drive, 99 yards. Very impressive last drive. Just a hell of a season, though, for JMU. To be a part of the ride, to get to go to so many games as a fan. I wouldn't have traded this season for anything. I don't care what other people say, what they think JMU fans would want. We know what we want, and it's this year in and year out. And give a shout out like you did for your coach, but Bob Chesney, in his 2 years at JMU, he's a JMU legend, getting us to the playoff, winning the Sun Belt, 12-2 record. Good luck at UCLA. Please don't take too many of our players, but I think he'll be a great coach. Unfortunately, in this game, our defense simply was overmatched, more so than I thought it would be. I really did not expect our defense to be the side of the ball that was so outmatched and outgunned. We just had no answer for the pure speed Oregon brought, and I did not think it would be as big of a problem. Our offense, honestly, looked really solid throughout the game. I know the scoreboard in the first half did not reflect that, But we just shot ourselves in the foot way too much in the first half. We had 13 penalties for 113 yards, which pushed us out of the red zone several times. We had 3 trips inside the 10-yard line in the first half that resulted in a total of 3 points. And when you play a team like Oregon, you have to walk away with touchdowns. And to walk away with no points, that was a backbreaker. JMU was perfect on 4th downs. They were aggressive. They went for it. And on our first drive after Oregon scored quickly, when we ran the outside zone and Alonzo Barnett put that DB on his ass for Wayne Knight, man, did I believe JMU had every possibility of winning this game. But I guess Alonzo Barnett's a safety hazard because he planted that guy, and it was awesome to watch. It was an awesome game to watch, regardless of the outcome. I would not have traded it for the world. If you had told me before the game that JMU would put up 500 yards of total offense with no turnovers, I would have been buying a ticket to the Orange Bowl, because if you had told me that, I would have thought, wow, we really showed up and came to play. And unfortunately, the defense just was overmatched. I truly thought if we scored around 24 points, it would be a competitive game. And unfortunately, 34 was not even enough. But JMU's guys played until the very end. They never gave up. Oregon played their starters for the entire game. I know there's a lot of conversations about, oh, they didn't, they did. If you look at the tape, even on the last drive, their entire starting defensive line is in there. They played their starters, and JMU outscored them in the second half. If we could have had it played just half as well as we did in the second half and the first half, I think that this game is even closer than what the final score was. It was unfortunate, but JMU's coming out of this a lot richer. We're going to rebuild. We've done this several times over the past decade. We get Billy Napier in here. He's bringing his guys in. I have a lot of confidence that JMU is going to keep this train rolling, and the national media attention has never been brighter on us right now. So, hell of a season, guys. Hold your heads up high. This team is going to be remembered in JMU history till the end of time as maybe the best team that they've ever fielded. It's up there with the best, if not the best. It created so many memorable moments for JMU fans, and they have everything to be proud of. They went in, traveled to Oregon, put up a hell of a fight, and no matter how the season ends, we're proud of JMU. Us as fans, we're proud to be part of this university, this school. So, all in all, we'll be back. I got every bit of confidence JMU will be back in this position, and they will continue to work until the very end, until it's achieved.
It was so fun to watch it. I mean, regardless of the outcome, I know I was with you. Of course, I was cheering for JMU there. I wanted one of, if not both, of those G5s to give a shot, and it was a highly entertaining game. I mean, you look at the reaction for Oregon as a whole after the game. They look at it and they go, we didn't do good. We didn't do our job, and I think that says a lot. And I got to give a shout out to Dante Moore as well immediately after the game, saying that he gave a shout out to JMU and said you guys absolutely deserve to be there. Something like that means a lot for a team like them, where it's like, look, obviously the score wasn't great in the end for us, but again, you guys earned your way there. You cannot take away what this does for the university as a whole on both sides, where you guys traveled across the country, still had over 3,000 fans there in the game, in the stands, the entire game. I don't care what anybody says. It does a lot for these programs.
Yes.
So it's not going to change that fact.
And credit to Oregon, they played phenomenal. I don't think there's a team in the country that beats first half Oregon from this past weekend. That's how good Oregon's offense looked, regardless of if they were playing JMU or Ohio State. That offense was humming at every possible level it could. They looked great in that first half. So, credit to Oregon. They played a phenomenal game. And credit to the Oregon fan base. JMU and Oregon fans made people believe that friendship can overcome anything in the dark times of college football. I will be cheering for Oregon. I have no beef with them. I hope that they can keep winning. I hate that they got to play Texas Tech, another team I want to cheer for. But I have no qualms with Oregon. They showed a lot of class and a lot of respect to JMU. And it was a great couple weeks of banter on social media. I wish we could have had the last laugh. But Oregon deserved the win. They outplayed us. They looked great. And I think out of all the teams that played this past weekend, I think Oregon's the only one that is a true contender for winning the Natty, as opposed to Ole Miss and Bama and Miami. I think Oregon's the only one of those four that has a shot to make a run here. And it's unfortunate that JMU was the team that had to face them, but they put up one hell of a fight. 34 points in a game is more points than over 12.5 teams have ever scored in the college football playoff. And 500 yards of total offense is more offense than Oregon has allowed at home since 2016. So that in itself is impressive. But hell of a season. I'm proud to be a JMU Duke, and we'll be back.
I'm hoping the same for my Green Wave. I think we'll get back. I think we have the resources now, the confidence and everything. So this is not the end for both of our teams here. I think we have really set the precedents now for the rest of the G5. I think they all know that they can do it too. And regardless of the outcome, this is what they want. I don't care what anybody says. This is what the G5 wants as a whole. So continuing with that into this defense of the G5 and these continued bad takes that everybody is just constantly pushing out, especially after this past weekend where every big media talking head got what they wanted and these quote-unquote blowouts, and just saying that you don't want G5 in there as a whole purely because the two games that involve G5s were quote blowouts is just the stupidest and laziest take you could think of. Like, it doesn't matter which teams are there. There's gonna be a blowout.
It's so frustrating, and I just don't understand why media pundits hate the group of five so much and are rooting for them to get blown out, like Bussin' with the Boys, actively cheering for our teams to get killed, cheering against the underdog just because they want to prove a point. Cheering against the underdog, to me, is just anti-American, and it really shows your true colors that you don't care about the sport, you care about your paycheck, so you're going to push whatever is going to help you with that paycheck. But saying that they shouldn't be in because they have the potential to get blown out is lazy, just like you said. The average margin of victory in the national championship game in the college football playoff era, is 19.3 points. That's the average. 5 of 11 have been blowouts of 21 plus. 6 of 11 have been 3-score games. We haven't had a 1-score national championship game since 2018, but people are worried about the competitiveness of the first round. It's just asinine and backwards thinking to me. You can't make the argument that it's okay for Power 4 teams to get blown out because you thought they might be competitive, but you knew group of 5 teams would be killed. That's an unfair double standard based off of nothing but your opinion, and there's just no sympathy for the group of 5, but people will come out in droves with sympathy for a Power 4 team that gets killed, like that happened last year in the first round with several of the teams.
And the thing that also just makes it even worse, too, is that when you get to these points where you know a G5 is going to get blown out, but then they don't, if you get that close game, you get that closer game, or even, a win, it's just going to turn into, well, this shouldn't have happened, or, oh, this happened. Like, they'll bring up a pile of excuses for these power conference teams purely because it didn't go their way. And it's like, it feels like there's no way for the G5 to get any sort of credit. I mean, we've seen it in the past with all these great bowl wins where the G5 pulls off these fantastic wins, and now it's like, well, we don't want that anymore. We're just we want to see the same 12 teams every single year, and half of them are going to get blown out, but it's okay because they're the power teams, and it's just, oh, well, the talent disparity this year was just different, and like, oh, a team like a Georgia just meant they were supposed to win it this year. And, last year with Tennessee getting absolutely dismantled by Ohio State, it's like, well, it was the expectation of a competitive game. And it was just like, whoa, Ohio State is really that good. And it's just like, why are we giving these excuses for these other teams? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And when all we know it comes down to is that stupid patch on their jersey where they're allowed to have all these excuses where when you change it, it just means like, oh no, you guys are supposed to lose by 50 plus, and if you lose by 20, well, you're a terrible team. You guys shouldn't be there. You guys deserve nothing but dirt.
The double standard of, oh, it's okay to get blown out if you're from a bigger, more well-funded conference, but it's not okay to get blown out if you're from one of the smaller conferences just makes zero sense. No one said that we needed to keep these Power 4 teams out of the playoffs forever after their bad losses, but the pitchfork and torches are out for the G5 teams to be punished when in the history of the college football playoff, we've had four, count them, four Group of 5 teams make the playoff and countless Power 4 teams. There is not enough of a data set to say all Group of 5 teams are going to get blown out just through 4 games. You cannot exclude 50% of the FBS from the playoff just because you think they're too small to compete. Unfortunately, it's a conversation that digs deeper than just the money and Group of 5 versus Power 4, again, which are made up terms, but the sport as a whole just kind of being broken right now. I talked to a lot of people this weekend about college football, and a lot of people had differing opinions about it. But one thing we could all agree on is that the sport as a whole is broken with how NIL works, with how the transfer portal works, with how these bloated conferences are making it harder to determine team strength and schedule strength. Everyone has different opinions on how the playoff should work, but everyone agrees that the sport as a whole needs a major change. And unfortunately, they're just going to keep slapping Band-Aids on it and not fixing the real problems. And it's really frustrating to see because these Group of 5 teams, they earn their spot, man. Playoffs should reward excellence, not just big brand names. And for those saying no to auto bids, no automatic qualifiers is just going to end up leading to no Group of 5 teams getting in. With how this current structure is laid out, it's extremely difficult for teams to be within the top 12 if you're a Group of 5 in the power rankings, especially with a biased committee. Boise State did it last year, and a lot of people are saying, look at them, look at 2021 Cincinnati as Group of 5 teams who, earned their way in. But JMU and Tulane earned their way in just the same. If you're going to keep expanding the playoff, you need to make conferences matter, and you reward conference winners, because that is how you determine a real playoff. In every other sport across the world, it's division conference champions get a shot in no matter what. And you see, I want to bring up something I saw Josh Pate talking about online. He was criticizing people saying that showcasing other blowouts in the playoffs is one of the dumbest and dishonest arguments to defend the Group of 5 that there are. And I understand where he's coming from, but the issue is that this has to be pointed out because 99% of media and media members are using this as the reason to exclude the Group of 5 because they are going to get blown out. And if that is your argument, that is a lazy argument, and it's intellectually dishonest to use it as the main or only reason to exclude the Group of 5. If you're going to say that you think they're going to get blown out as your argument, then we have to come on and show the receipts of, hey, look at all these other Power 4 teams that got blown out too. This conversation goes a lot bigger than just that, and I don't think blowouts, hypothetical or real, should ever be considered when creating the playoff. You need to reward teams that have earned the spot. And if you want to have the conversation about what truly means earned, or if the format of the current playoff is not correct, that's a completely different argument. That's a hypothetical of what could change in the future. This year, these teams, JMU and Tulane, earned these spots. No doubts about it.
Exactly. I mean, it's absurd to think that someone like Josh Pate, who's supposed to be advocating for this quote-unquote commissioner of college football, is just trying to just completely isolate and get rid of, half of the D1 sport and the FBS level, where you have these teams that, they work so hard with, what little they have, and they're able to get these results out on the field. and they get that chance. They get that 1 year where it's like, look, we got the team this year, and like it's like we can do it this year, and they finally get that opportunity, and they inevitably or just somehow or get blown out or whatnot, and it's like, okay, cool, whatever, like it happened, but they made their way there, they earned it, they got to it. And then just to sit here and say that, well, trying to say that other teams getting blown out is a stupid defense when it comes to the G5, it's like, well, why is that the case? Like, why is it okay for the P4s to get blown out but not the G5s? And any reason you're saying and the G5 defense is, or against the G5 is like, well, why can't you say the same thing when it comes to the Power 4? I mean, Oregon was the number 1 seed last year and won the Big Ten by they beat Ohio State earlier in the season, and they beat Penn State in the championship game, and then they play Ohio State again and get destroyed. So I don't understand why that's okay, because like, oh, well, because they're the 1 seed, they this and all that and blah, 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 and this. It's like, who cares? They got blown out too. So like to sit here and say that it's a crime against humanity and a crime against the sport for someone in the G5 to get blown out just blows my mind. And again, with the whole auto qualifying thing, is like, you're going after the wrong people here. The G5 is playing by the rules that they did not set. And for them to actually earn their ways in like this says a lot about the sport, where I think, you want to talk about issues, go against these bloated conferences where you have these teams that don't play each other. Like, I'm going to use Texas A&M as the example. They're 11-1. They played none of the top teams in the SEC except for Texas and lost. And they get to the point, and then they play another. They get in purely because of the patch on their shoulder, and they get in, and then they play another decent team, and they lose. And it's like, okay, well, how could this have been prevented? And it's like, well, they have a conference that has a billion teams. They're only playing the bottom half. They don't have to play the Georgia, the Alabama, and the other teams. It's like, well, there's your issue there. And then you get to all the conferences as a whole, and then especially the ACC this year, where you have these stupid tiebreakers where it prevents these teams like a Miami from getting into the championship game to truly showcase that they are the best team in the ACC because of these tiebreakers. And that starts because of the bloated conferences where you have so many teams in one conference, and there's no way for them to all play each other. And it just makes it even harder for the at-large. And then you get to the conference championships where it's like, well, okay, yeah, Duke won the ACC, but are they really the ACC champ because they didn't play Miami, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's a problem that you created yourself with these stupid TV deals and all these, the realignment and all these conferences, where we had a somewhat sound structure with these conferences when the Pac-12 was still alive and well and had all these powerhouse teams. And, with the original prospect of it, it was supposed to be top 6 conference champions because they had the power, or they had the Pac-12. And now that gets blown away, and it's like, okay, well, now we have one less conference. And it just makes that talent disparity even more, where these top teams are not playing each other, and they wonder why they're not getting in.
And look at it. This is the second year of the 12-team playoff. And like you said, they're coming after the wrong people. The group of 5 have played within a structure that was against them. It's very hard for the group of 5 to be successful with this structure. And now they want to completely change the playoff because 2 group of 5 teams got in. And you know what? I'm not even fully opposed to saying that, yeah, 2 group of 5 teams probably shouldn't have gotten in. I'm really happy that they did, but you're going to execute the wrong person for this crime, pretty much, where the ACC's the conference that completely opened the gates for this to happen. And because they allowed a situation that really wasn't thought possible to occur to happen, the people who are punished are the group of 5 teams. That is, you don't know your ass from your elbow, if that's what you think, in my opinion. You're asking for the group of 5 to be punished for something that was completely out of their control and they benefited from because of another conference's stupidity. And it's so frustrating to see this happen over and over again, where let's punish the little guy when they're already trying to compete at the FBS level with, their arms tied behind their backs and a blindfold over their eyes. It's impossible for them to get a foot up when the Power 4 just keeps rating them and saying, oh, you guys aren't good enough, but give us all your coaches and all your players, and then they'll be good enough. And this,
One thing no, go ahead.
no, you go.
No, just one thing I had seen about, kind of going in on the auto bid sort of thing where, these teams like a Tulane and a JMU, they win their conference championship. Okay, cool. Like, they did something that other teams could not do, and that's win a conference. So I've seen these ideas of, okay, well, what if we introduced the sort of play-in game where you get those quote-unquote auto G5s playing the first two teams out. So this year, for example, a Tulane would have played Notre Dame or BYU, and JMU would have played the other of the two teams. And I'm like, okay, understandable. But then at the same time, again, you're making it so that a team that won something in a conference championship has to play a team that didn't. And so that's an extra game that team is going to be playing compared to especially Notre Dame, where they played nothing, and then BYU played in their conference championship game, but they lost. So that's an extra game that the team is going to be playing, as opposed to, let's say Notre Dame, for example. If Tulane were to play Notre Dame, it's like, okay, now that's an extra game that they've played in comparison to them. Then the proposal that I saw is that that Tulane and JMU would travel to BYU and Notre Dame. And I'm like, well, why would they do
Reward the
that?
conference
Like,
champions.
if you're going to do
let
it,
them host.
yeah, I say if you're gonna do that, and we're gonna do this sort of play-in thing, you reward the conference championship game and you give them the host. I want to see, if you want to say that BYU, Notre Dame are these fantastic teams, then let them go to these quote-unquote little guys and let them earn their way in on the road. That says a lot more to me than having a team like a JMU and a Tulane travel to these teams that did absolutely nothing and didn't win anything, hardware-wise, and they get to host a play-in game that move makes no sense to me. I mean, why are you going to reward these guys, for loot? Like, let's just say BYU, for example. I love them. I wish they should have been in, but they lose their conference championship game, and you're telling me they get to host a play-in game against a JMU or a Tulane? Like, that would make zero sense. That's just telling me as a team, like, okay, I can lose this game, and I can still host a game to get into the playoff. Like, it just doesn't make any sense in that point. Like, I think there are plenty of ways around this that can easily fix a lot of this stuff, but they're never going to take the easy way. They're just going to look at the way that's going to get them the most money. And I think your most likely outcome from all of this is just going to be another expansion. And they're going to find a way to kind of exclude G5 auto bids, but make it in a way where they're still in, but they have to do something. They have to set like sort of requirements or like predetermined stuff of like, oh, you got to be here, you got to be there. And it just doesn't make sense with the way things are falling now, where, you get these teams like a Tulane and a JMU where they're earning these games, these conference championship games, and they're winning them. And it feels like they're just kind of getting shot in the back of the head because they won these games. They won something. And it's like, well, yeah, you won these games, and now you got to go there. Now you got to do this. In comparison to where it's like, we won something. We should be able to do something. This should, give us something. And whether it's a bid and an auto bid because we won our title or not.
Another thing that's really grinding my gears are the people who are asking for a separate group of 5 playoff, because these are coming from people and accounts who don't even cheer for group of 5 teams. It is so mind-numbing to see these people say, oh, wouldn't this be great for group of 5 teams? Then boom, they have a Penn State logo as their profile picture. It's like, you're only doing this suggestion because you want to just take your ball and play somewhere else. You're taking the group of 5 and just saying, no, I'm not having fun playing with you anymore, and putting them off to the side here. These people are saying, oh, it would be so great for the group of 5. It would help them build their programs more. But these are the same people who don't watch FCS playoffs anyway, and with how it's currently set up, they're not going to watch the group of 5 playoff either. Just for some numbers, the first round of the college football playoff averages about 10 million viewers. The Montana versus Montana State semifinal game in the FCS playoffs at 3:30 on Saturday garnered 1.9 million, which is high for an FCS playoff game because that was a heated rivalry for a chance at the Natty. The group of 5's lifeline is having a seat at the table with the college football playoff. If you take that access away, You don't help group of 5 teams by giving them a championship to play for. You're burying them because you're essentially just saying, here, go play for something else. And you're not going to allow these group of 5 programs to be built up in any meaningful way. Fundraising would go down. It'd be harder to garner support. And as someone who went to JMU at the end of our FCS era, I promise you JMU as a university, as a sports program, has grown in the last 4 years than they ever would of staying at the FCS level. I said this on Twitter. I would not have traded this college football playoff run and season for anything, including an FCS title. Because guess what? At the end of the day, that's not helping you grow. That's not helping your team to get better because there is a ceiling placed on you of how far you can really grow.
It'll always be like that, and to try and basically put that message across to these, these talking heads of, give them their own sort of playoff is they'll never quite understand because they're going to be like, oh, well, you want to just keep, showcasing these blowouts and, you're okay with your team losing by 31. I'm like, yeah, because they got to that point by being at this level. If they were still, if they were on a lower level or they had their own playoff, none of this would have happened. None of, Tulane wouldn't be walking out with $8 million extra in their pocket. Like, they wouldn't have gotten the exposure that they've gotten where it could possibly lead into more, players and, coaches and stuff that want to go to this spot. Like, you give them their own playoff. It's just like, all right, well, half of these teams, could not exist in 10 years. We already have these lower end sort of group of 5 teams that are like just barely above that sort of FCS level, and you could almost argue they could probably be not that great in the FCS level. And what's keeping them alive is sort of the conference and how things are going nowadays and stuff like that. But like, making them go and do their own sort of thing in a G5 sort of playoff, you're just adding an extra layer to the D1 level that is not needed. And to sit here and say that these top G5 teams, can't compete with the top P4 teams, like, cool, we can understand that sort of thing. The money discrepancy between those is just absurd. But then you want to sit here and say that you're telling me that a team like a Kentucky is better than a team like a Tulane or JMU? Absolutely not. I would sit here and I guarantee, I'm not one for hypotheticals, but I'd be willing to say that both of our teams would win that game. And
I agree.
It's just ridiculous to say that, these top G5 teams cannot compete on any sort of level in the P4 when we've seen teams have success that have made that jump.
It's, I saw Bud Elliott, who I think is the number one enemy of college football right now, coming at people for the idea of promotion and relegation in college football, which I think we both personally think wouldn't be a terrible idea if this is how you want to change the sport.
Yeah.
But he said that there is no reason to do promotion and relegation because no group of 5 teams are even close to where Power 4 teams are, which is the biggest load of bullshit I have ever heard. Boise State was ranked in the top 10 last season alone. That they were right there. JMU and Tulane right now are ranked inside the top 25. That puts them ahead of roughly 50 Power 4 teams already. So to say that there's no group of 5 teams that even come close, so that promotion relegation make no sense, is bullshit. You give these teams opportunities with that because then they have an ability to get more money through TV deals. You have this ability to keep growing. And if you think the Boston colleges, the Northwesterns, the Mississippi States, the Colorados, the Rutgers, the Oklahoma States, you can go on and on with these power, mythical Power 4 teams. They are, if you think they are so much better than group of 5 teams, you're just flat out wrong. I would agree that the very top of the FBS, they have a huge gap on the on the group of 5. That is to say, the top teams within the sport do have a huge gap on the top teams within the group of 5. However, those same teams have a huge gap on who should be their peers in the Power 4. You're telling me Ohio State is equivalent to Northwestern or Purdue? No. It makes no sense. Teams like that are at best at the same level as the top group of 5 teams and mid-level group of 5 teams. Yet the enemies of the sport want them to be part of it simply because they wear a little patch on their jersey, and that's what they've been indoctrinated into. the average Power 4 school is not nearly as better from the average Group of 5 school in most cases. It's offensive to insinuate things like that, in my opinion. And we've been told for the last couple weeks now that, the Group of 5 also shouldn't be included because TV ratings will suck because those teams are involved, which you should never base a playoff off of TV ratings because that's asinine. But if that is true, why are the same people the ones suggesting that a Group of 5 playoff would make for a better product for these Group of 5 teams? When you're already saying they're not relevant, how would grouping them together make them more relevant? It wouldn't boost TV sponsorship. You're just recreating the FCS, and before you know it, the North Dakotas, the Montanas would be jumping up because they want to be at the second highest level still. And exposure and opportunity of playing in the college football playoff has so much more value than playing in some NIT style bracket for another national championship.
It's absurd to think that, and just to kind of backtrack towards where Bud Elliott had said where these teams aren't even close, and this year specifically where a G5 team in Tulane beat Northwestern by 20, who that was the same margin of score that Oregon beat them by, and beat the ACC champion in Duke. So to sit here and say that they aren't even close, so you're telling me that Tulane would go win the ACC if they were in the ACC? Because that's all I'm hearing out of that is they're not. If they're not even close, then you're telling me that a team that they had beat would. You're telling me we wouldn't run the ACC? No, that sounds stupid. The logic there is just totally irrelevant and stupid. And it just sounds like someone that's just trying to kill the sport. And I agree with you where Bud Elliott is just horrible for the sport right now. And the things he was saying is just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're just killing your image like a Joel Klatt did, the other week. And it's just ridiculous to think that we have gotten to this point where there's such a disparity and like they are just bending over backwards for these P4 teams. And it's such a shame to see that we've gone this far. And I'm hoping and praying that things just get better over time. And this trend we're on right now is looking like our teams are on the outside looking in, and it's not looking great.
No, it's sad to see college football be just turned into a greed pot of people trying to cut the biggest slice of the pie out for themselves. And we all know the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be the last ones laughing because they're going to first get rid of the Group of 5, and the ACC and Big 12 teams need to be supporting Group of 5 because they're on the chopping block next. That's the reality, and they're just going to make NFL light if they can. But we could sit here and beat a dead horse all day, but let's look at some more exciting things, some fun bowl games over this Christmas holiday and leading up into the next round of the playoff. Starting us off with the Brand Bowl, as we like to call it, Penn State versus Clemson in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Field, December 27th at noon. Obviously a fun matchup in the sense of you get two big brands who had really bad years for what their expectations were. Two teams ranked in the top 5 to start the year, and Penn State finishes 6-6. Clemson finishes 7-5. I think this it'll be a fun game for people to tune into, though. But I will go out and say it. I do think Clemson's going to be a little bit more motivated than Penn State, and they're going to come out on top in this one.
I think I'm with you there. I think Clemson's got some more stuff going their way as Penn State's kind of in sort of like almost a rebuild now at this point. But, this bowl is a battle of the what could have been sort of thing, the preseason bowl, you could almost say, where, had these top 10 teams in the preseason polls and whatnot, and now they're in the Pinstripe Bowl. So it just goes to show that preseason means absolutely nothing. But moving on to my favorite bowl as of right now, besides the Xbox Bowl, because that one's now up there, is, of course, the Pop-Tart Bowl, one of the most electric bowls in recent years, where we have Georgia Tech taking on BYU. Their helmets are just sick as hell. I'll be adding the sprinkles. I know they had actually taken the inspiration from someone on Twitter who put the sprinklers onto Georgia Tech and BYU's helmets because the guy said he got a text from a representative and said, "Thanks for the inspiration." So shout out to him for coming up with that idea, because now we get to see it brought to light with the Pop-Tart sprinkles on their helmets, excuse me. But I think this is going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to see Haynes King strap it up one more time with his boys, where he said he's going to finish the season out with them the same way he started it. I mean, he just plays electric football. BYU is always an entertaining team. I think most of their players are playing. And I'm hoping I think Bear Bachmeier is playing as well. So I think it'll be a great quarterback matchup there as well. And the Pop-Tarts Bowl as a whole is just electric from beginning to end, with the winning team getting to destroy a Pop-Tart and eat it live on air is just hilarious to me. But with all that, I mean, who do you think is going to win this one?
I'm gonna go with Georgia Tech here. I'm going with Haynes King. I think he's gonna be the most motivated player out there, and in today's era of bowl games, I think that means a lot. This is his last collegiate game, a guy who loves Georgia Tech, and I think he's gonna be laying his life out on the line like he does each and every week for the Yellow Jackets.
I'm gonna have to agree with you here. I think he has a lot more to play for here than BYU as a whole, and I think that goes a long way in these bowl games, like you had said, where it's just going to mean that much more to him, so he gives that much more effort, and he already gives 150 billion% effort every single play. I can't go against my boy Haynes King. I know I've picked with BYU all season, but I got to go with my boy Haynes King, and hopefully, maybe this bumps up his draft stock potentially, but I'm looking forward to this one.
It's definitely one of the bowl games we've had circled since it was announced. Another one that we really enjoyed the announcement of is North Texas taking on San Diego State in the New Mexico Bowl on the 27th at 6 p.m. This one was a little bit more exciting when it was first announced, but as we know, North Texas's quarterback has now hit the portal, so they'll be without their best player against San Diego State. The runner-ups, San Diego State just missed out on being a runner-up for their conference, but one of the better teams in the Mountain West, and North Texas obviously losing to Tulane in the American title game. I think this is a really fun matchup. It sucks that North Texas will be shorthanded, and for that reason, I am going with the Aztecs here from San Diego State.
I think I'm going to stick with North Texas here and stick with the American. I think their team is still fairly built good, even without, obviously their star player and Drew Mestamaker. I'll have to keep an eye on, I'll have to look out if Caleb Hawkins is going to play for North Texas. He had gotten hurt in the American Conference Championship game. It was his shoulder, I believe. But if he is playing, he is one of the better running backs in the nation. He led all running backs in touchdowns this season, I believe. So that dude is a baller. I was very much worried about him in the conference championship game, but unfortunately he got hurt. I never want to see that. But I think that the team as a whole is still very well put together and good enough to get one more hoorah out of them.
Definitely going to be a good game regardless. Another really good bowl game, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, 7:30 that same night. UVA taking on Mizzou in a little ACC-SEC matchup here. UVA obviously can be blamed for JMU getting in if you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, blowing the ACC title game against Duke. Mizzou kind of being an SEC merchant this whole season, being ranked for God knows why, just because of the patch on their jerseys. I do think this will be a fun bowl game, though, between two evenly matched teams.
I think it's going to be entertaining. I know of some people that are going to go there. They're they're alumni of UVA, so they'll be going there. But I think it's going to be pretty evenly matched, honestly. Like you had said, Mizzou is just kind of that SEC merchant, the way to prop up other SEC teams, it felt like this season. While UVA had a sneaky good season and just came up short. But I think I'm going to go with UVA here, and I think they're going to get it done. I think they're going to try and, get back at what they thought they could have done in that conference championship game, and hopefully, trying to right the wrongs at the end of the season there.
I really want to go with Mizzou here. just because of my personal vendetta against UVA. However, Bo Pribula is leaving Mizzou, and he will not be playing in this game. And for that reason, I do think UVA is going to come out on top. Otherwise, I would have picked Mizzou, but I think it's going to be a close game regardless. Two more teams here that were kind of merchants of their conference. Tennessee, obviously, in the SEC, and Illinois in the Big Ten, playing in the Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl Tuesday, December 30th. These are two teams that had some pretty lofty expectations to start the year and didn't have a bad year by any means, but didn't have a year that they wanted to remember either.
Absolutely. Tennessee felt like it was one of those teams that were so close, and then after that Georgia game where they lost, it kind of just, I don't want to say fell apart, but just never quite got back up there. Illinois as well, that seemed like they were trying to piece together a sneaky good season, and then again kind of just faltered out there. But these are kind of two teams that are a battle of the ifs. If one thing would have went, could have seen a different outcome. Both were ranked for quite a while, but it's going to be, sort of almost like a toss-up, I would say. Depends which orange you like most. I think I'm going to go with Illinois here. I think Tennessee is going to be checked out and not want to be there. Who knows how many of their players are actually playing. But I think I'm definitely going to go with the Fighting Illini.
I am going to take the other orange here. I'm going to go with the Volunteers. I've been against them this whole season, so I'll end the season going with them. Joey Aguilar, the quarterback, Sunbelt alum. I think he is really good. I think he'll want to show out in his last collegiate game here. So I will go with Tennessee here. No, I am not being taken over by aliens. This really is me taking Tennessee.
Are you who are you? This is not the Hunter I know, because he would have never picked Tennessee.
In the last bowl game we're going to highlight, USC is going to be taking on TCU in the Alamo Bowl the night of December 30th, 9 p.m. Again, two teams that had some pretty high expectations coming into this year. USC honestly had a pretty decent year. TCU just up and down the whole season. I thought that they were going to be a little bit better with Josh Hoover at quarterback, but they just could not remain consistent here.
I feel like that's the kind of tale of a lot of these teams in these bowl games, where it was very up and down with a lot of them, with sort of reaching those highs to the highs where they thought they had a shot, and then just a gut wrenching loss or something like that. But USC was definitely one of those teams where they were in it there. I mean, they had their chance. They were ranked top 15 at one point, and it just seemed to just fall apart there at the end. TCU, again, I'm with you there, where it seemed like they had sort of that shot, but again, just up and down the entire season. Great wins turning into bad losses and whatnot. But these, again, still two pretty good teams, but I think I'm going to go with USC here just purely because TCU will not have their quarterback in Josh Hoover. I think USC as a whole is just a better built team, and I think that they just get it done.
I agree with you. I'm going with the Trojans. Not much more to say besides Hoover's going to be out. I think Trojans get it done here. This week, though, we are not going to be going deep into the college football playoff matchups quite yet. We're going to save that for next week's episode. But just a short recap, Miami's going to be taking on Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Oregon's taking on Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. Bama will be taking on Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And Ole Miss and Georgia will be facing off in the Sugar Bowl. And, of course, we're going to give some FCS love. Illinois State is going to be taking Montana State on January 5th in the FCS playoff, and we will be doing a preview of that game and making our picks there. But shout out Illinois State, proving that underdogs can make a run in college football. From unseeded to national title game, overcoming a 29.5-point underdog status against North Dakota State in the playoff. They are the first FCS playoff team to win 4 straight road games to make the title game, breaking my JMU Dukes 3 straight road games to a title game in FCS history. So that'll be a really fun matchup, and we'll dive more into that later in the month here.
really looking forward to those games, especially that FCS title game there. I think it's going to be highly entertaining, especially with how Illinois State has made this run. And then obviously Montana State coming off of a great rivalry game where it was close and then they just blew the top off. So, but again, the rest of these playoff games, Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, looking forward to those. We'll take a deeper dive into them in the next episode here when they're actually playing in the weekend. It's another big issue I have is this stupid playoff schedule. It just makes no sense. But let us know what you guys think, about these games as a whole this past weekend. What are you looking forward to with these other games, and these bowl games and the upcoming continuation of the playoff. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at Dynasty Dumbies. Feel free to follow our personal Twitter accounts where we will continue to be the forefront of G5 football no matter what. Doesn't matter the outcomes. We will still defend them to the day we die at Hunter_Shaw5 and at CronyTony20. And we will see you all next week to preview the games.
Happy holidays, everyone.